Hello, third graders. It's great to see you. I wondered if you remember the name of this. I bet some of you are saying a horn of plenty. Do you remember the big word we learned last month? A cornucopia? Maybe you had this sitting on your Thanksgiving table last week. I hope so. Anyway, we're going to do another Hercules story in just a second, but I have a great riddle for you. Are you ready? What is red and white and red and white and red and white? Oh, I see some people looking pretty smart out there. It's Santa Claus rolling down a hill. I know you love it. Well, as I said, we're going to talk about Hercules again. And Hercules, earlier in his life, from when we heard about having to defeat his enemy and win the hand of the princess, he had been put under a spell and he murdered someone. And so his punishment was he had to do 12 impossible tasks. Do you hear that word, impossible task? What would be an impossible task for you? For me, it would be running 6 miles. I don't know if I could do that. But listen to one of those impossible tasks. King Eurystheus was assigned by the goddess Hera to come up with some terrible tasks, and they had hoped that only one would do. You're going to hear about one of those today. He called Hercules into his courtyard and he said, "Hercules, bring me back the 3 golden apples." For far away it was said that a tree grew apples that were gold. Hercules bowed and said, "Yes, your majesty." "Where are they?" And he said, it is on the island Hesperides." "Yes, your master." "Where's Hesperides?" King Eurystheus said, "I'm just the king. I don't know everything. Go find it. Go find it. Go find it." Now it was his hope that Hercules would be gone forever because people in his kingdom really liked Hercules better than King Eurystheus. So he was kind of hoping he would be gone forever. Well, Hercules indeed started traveling and traveling and traveling and traveling. After a couple of months, he came up to this magic mountain that was shrouded in clouds. And stepping on top of this mountain were 3 beautiful goddesses. And he said, "Hello, good ladies. I am looking for the golden apples." "Oh," they said, "we don't know where they are, but the old man by the sea can tell you where they are. Be sure that you hold him tightly before he slips away." And the 3 goddesses turned and walked back into the clouds. Hercules said, "Well, at least that's a little good information." So he went down the shoreline, and there in the foreground was an old man. He had long gray hair that went down his back, and he had a long gray beard that went all the way to his stomach, and he was resting on the shoreline. Hercules snuck up behind him and grabbed him and squeezed them. It was a good thing too, because just then the old man turned himself into a powerful stag, a deer, and he kept trying to stab Hercules, pierce his heart with his long antlers that had suddenly grown. Hercules kept holding him and holding him and holding him and wrestling him, and then the old man turned himself into a seabird, a giant seabird, and it was beating its wings against Hercules, and still he held on. Finally, the old man said, "What do you want from me, son?" Hercules said, "I want to know where the golden apples are." "Go, go, go and find Atlas. Atlas can tell you where they are, but first you must pass the giant. Be very careful, because he's very powerful." Hercules said, "Thank you, sir," and he put the old man back down on the sand. On he walked and walked and walked, and then up ahead he thought he could see a very, very large tree. But as he got closer, he realized that it was a giant. It was like taller than our houses. He was huge. He walked up to him and he grabbed him, because remember how strong Hercules is. And he grabbed him, hoisted him into the air, and began to turn around and around and around and around with the giant. And then he threw him down, and the giant was even stronger. So Hercules charged at him again and picked him up and spun him around and around and around and around and around and threw him down. Said, "Tell me where the apples are." He said, "No." And he grew even stronger. This time he took him in the air and he spun him around for a little bit, and he didn't set him down. The giant said, "Let me down." "No, tell me where the golden apples are." He said, "No." And an amazing thing was happening. The giant was getting weaker and weaker and weaker and shorter and shorter and shorter. He said, "Oh, Hercules, put me down. I'm no longer a giant." And Hercules put him down and he said, "Where are the golden apples?" He said, "Go ask Atlas. You must travel a half day. Go to the edge of the world and you will find Atlas." Well, I don't know if you've heard of the god Atlas. You may have heard of like an atlas, which is like a book of maps. It was named that because the Greeks believed that Atlas held the world on his shoulders. That's what kept the world from flying off into the sky. So he said, "Okay, Atlas, I've got to go get to Hesperides and get those 3 golden apples." Atlas said, "Oh, I can go for you. It is far too hard and dangerous for you to go. Here, just hold the world while I'm gone." So he heaved the world on top of Hercules' shoulders. Well, even the mighty Hercules stumbled just a little bit, and then he got his balance, and he said, "Okay, be quick, be quick." And so off went off went Atlas. By the next afternoon, he was back, and he came up to Hercules and said, "I have the 3 golden apples from Hesperides." Hercules said, "Yes, yes, I can take them back to the king." And he said, "Not so fast, buddy. I don't want to hold that world on my shoulders anymore. You have to do it for another 1,000 years. Hercules said that wasn't a part of the deal. He said, "But I've held it for 1,000 years and I want to go play for a little bit." Hercules was not only strong, he was smart. He said, "You know, Atlas, I could see why you want to be out from under the world. How about if you hold it for a little bit and I put some shoulder pads, because it's kind of chafing my shoulder." And he said, "Well, I do kind of know what you mean. Yeah, I could do that while you put your shoulder pads on." So Hercules transferred the world to the back of Atlas's shoulders. And then he took the apples and said, "Atlas, thank you very much." And he left. And he got back several months later to the king's castle. And the guard said, "King Eurystheus, Hercules is outside and wishes to see you." What? 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 He wasn't supposed to be back for years and years and years, or maybe forever. He said, "I think he has what you wanted." And sure enough, Hercules came in and bowed before the king and gave him the 3 golden apples. Next month, you'll hear about another one of the impossible tasks. Thank you. Let's do another joke. Are you ready? On Christmas, who delivers presents to the sharks? Are you ready? Santa Jaws? Oh, isn't that a good one? Isn't that a good one? Yeah, I know, you love it. Now we're going to go to another very unlikely and not necessarily strong hero, but a strong hero. Have you studied fractions yet in 3rd grade? You know, like if your mother says you can have half of the candy bar, I bet you know to split it down the middle, take one now, eat the other one tomorrow. Or if she said, you may have 1/3 of a piece of a candy bar, would you know to cut it 1, and then 2, and then that last piece would be the 3rd? Okay, keep that in mind as you listen to Sir Clegs and the Christmas cherries. Hey, speaking of cherries, how many of you love cherries, particularly at the end of summer when they're very ripe and sweet? Oh, I do too. Well, that's going to be important in the story, Sir Clegs and the Christmas Cherries. Sir Clegs had been a very successful knight. He had fought in battles. He had protected his people. And when he came home from the wars as a knight, he liked to give in his castle large parties every Christmas and give his subjects food and drink and gifts. And he did this every year for 10 years. But then his money was gone. He had no wealth. He had to move out of the castle, and he had to sell all of his livestock, like his horses and stuff. And everyone left. They abandoned him, except his good wife. His good wife helped him farm, and even though she had once been a lady, she was very helpful to everyone. Well, that year for Christmas, the king, way up in the castle, had sent out word that he was giving a Christmas feast and all of the knights should come. Well, Sir Clegs was very sad because he couldn't go. He didn't have a present to give to the king. And look at these tattered clothes that he wore. He couldn't show up in a castle with all the fine ladies and the gentlemen in their satin coats. He couldn't go. And it was very sad. His wife came to him and said, "Husband, we have so much to be thankful for. Why don't we have a feast today just for us? And I know it will not be like the feast of the past, but it will be you and I, and we can be happy." He said, "Yes, you're right." And he walked out the back door into the snow-covered fields, and he bent down to say a thank you for having such a wonderful wife and all the blessings he did have. But as he raised up, he hit his head on a branch. And what was unusual about that is that the branch had leaves on it, green leaves. in the middle of winter. And then as he looked at it again, there were cherries all over that branch, that one branch. He called to his wife, come here, you have to see this. And she came running, and she couldn't believe all of the cherries. They quickly picked them while standing in the snow and put them in a big basket. Inside, she said, Sir Clegs, my husband, you must go see the king and give him a gift of the Christmas cherries. He will love it. He said, indeed he would. And with a gift to give, he didn't feel so ashamed of his rags. So early the next morning, Sir Clegs started walking up to the castle. Well, he didn't have a horse to ride because he was broke. He didn't have any money. But he walked and he walked all day. And finally, he arrived to the gate of the castle. And there was a porter standing there. And he said, be gone, you beggar, you smell. Get out of here, get out of here. Sir Clegs bowed, because obviously the porter didn't realize who he was. He said, I have brought a gift of cherries for the king. I must go in. Well, the porter looked at it and said, yeah, those are beautiful cherries. I tell you what, you can go in if whatever reward the king gives you, I get a third of it. Sir Clegs said, yes, of course. So he walked across the courtyard and got to the door of the main dining hall. And there was an usher there, and he said, stop! And he held up both of his swords. He said, this is not the entrance for beggars. Go outside. Scraps will be thrown to you later. Sir Clegs bowed and said, I have come with a gift for the king. And he uncovered his basket and showed him those beautiful Christmas cherries again. Said the usher. Okay, you can go in, but whatever prize the king gives you, I get a third of it. Okay, said Sir Clegs. He went into the dining hall where all the beautiful ladies in their hats and their satin dresses were dancing, and the lords were there, but no one remembered Sir Clegs. And out came the king's guard onto the middle of the dance floor, and he grabbed Clegs and said, what are you doing here? Who let this beggar in? Now you gotta get out, get out. And Clegs said, sir, I have come to give the king a gift, a most unusual gift, maybe even a miraculous gift. It's Christmas cherries. The man looked at it and said, oh, that is wonderful. The king will love these, but I'll only let you see him. Yeah, you got it. If you give me a third of the reward the king gives you. Sir Clegs said, that will be doable. So he went up to the king's throne and waited his turn, and then he bowed before the king and gave him the basket of Christmas cherries and told him how he had found it out in the cold, in the snow, but there was one limb blooming with beautiful cherries. The king was just thrilled and said, beggar, sit down here and eat among us. You have brought us a wonderful gift. Well, all sat and ate a fine meal. And then Sir Clegs got up to go, and the king said, you look vaguely familiar. Who are you? He said, sir, I'm Sir Clegs, your loyal knight. I fought by your side for many years. He said, of course, I remember you. And you were the one who always gave wonderful Christmas parties for all in your fiefdom. Oh, I will give you anything you want. What would you like, Sir Clegs? And Sir Clegs said, I would like 12 switches. He said, okay, seeing your condition and how poor you are, I would have thought you had wished for something else, but okay. And he said, I want to deliver these 12 switches to some people who live here in your castle. He said, okay. So he went out and he found those three guys. First he found the guard, and he said, the king gave me this to give to you. And he hit the guard real hard and hit him 3 more times. He said, there. And he walked on. Then he found the other 2 guys, the porter and the steward, and he delivered to each of them 4 whacks with the stick. And then he wanted to go back in and thank the king one more time for a lovely afternoon and how good it was to see him. So he went back into the throne room and bowed again and said, thank you very much, King. I've delivered my switches. And he said, why did you beat some of the people in my castle? And he told him the story of how they had each bribed him by saying, if you give me 1/3 of your reward, then I will let you in. Well, the king was furious about this. He called the porter, he called the steward, he called the guard, and he said, is this story true? And they all just looked down at the ground and nodded their heads. He said, Sir Cleves, it is so good to see you once again, and I will grant you a much greater gift. You and your lovely wife will have a castle to live in, and you will have cattle, and you will have horses, and you will have gold, and you will never want again because of the wonderful Christmas cherries. And Sir Cleves went back to his wife, and indeed they moved into a castle, and they lived happily and richly forever. And that is the story by Mr. Norton of the Christmas cherries. How about one last riddle? Here we go. Are you ready? You know, when you cross something, it's like you join it. You kind of combine it. Well, what do you get when you cross a Christmas tree with a pineapple? What do you get? I'm sorry, I gave away the punchline. A Christmas tree with an apple, you get a pineapple. That's my Christmas gift to you. You have heard my stories and you've listened very well. Maybe sometime this month you would like to tell somebody the stories of the 3 golden apples, or maybe you would like to tell the story of Sir Cleves and the Christmas cherries. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next year in January. Bye-bye.